So, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining our session today. We are the Pittsburgh Java User Group, and today is our last session for this year. Yay! So I'm very excited to have Don. Oh my God, I made it Donham now. Okay, Don. If you need a name for your world tour, this is it. Okay. But anyway, we have Donham and Rustam for our last session. But like the usual housekeeping stuff, you can follow us on our Twitter group right there, and continue following us on the meetup group because that's where we'll post our future events. And you should find all of our other information like our recordings, where our YouTube channel should be up there as well on the meetup page. If you go to the description, you should see how to get there. Subscribe to it so you can start, getting notifications, I guess, once when we upload the recorded sessions. And we would like to thank our official sponsor, JFrog and BNY Mellon. With that, I'm going to hand it off to our speakers today. If you could introduce yourselves and take it away, Don and Rustam. I'm going to stop sharing.
I can just share my screen.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Can you see my screen?
Yes,
we can see your screen.
Okay, so we'll jump into introductions. So go for it, Rustam.
All right, I'm getting to start. Yay! So my name is Rustam, and I am. So good afternoon to all of you. For me, it's a kind of borderline of good night and good mornings. I'm based in Norway, so it's just 6 minutes past midnight right now. So I'm a chief engineer at a company here in Norway, consultancy. Most of the things I do, it's Java and cloud. I've been Java champion for quite a few years now. I'm also a good developer of expert for cloud. Community lead. I used to lead a few communities, and I'm still leading a few communities as well. So involved in even more communities, and doing all this kind of traveling to conferences and doing talks stuff as well. One of the conferences that is, well, I guess is no more in its previous form, at least, is Joe 1, and I just couldn't stay away without mentioning it and saying, well, you know what, I actually got one of the last Joe 1 Rockstar titles that you could get, and that's a little bit kind of a bit fun. I guess it's more in a fun fact category than anything, but you know, since we're doing introductions. All right, that's me. Let's go over to you, Donald.
Yes, thanks, Rustam. So my name is Donald Raab. I'm a managing director and distinguished engineer at BNY Mellon. I am the creator, also a project lead and committer for the Eclipse Collections open source Java library. Been a Java champion since 2018. Was a member of the JSR 335 expert group, which for those that don't know, was the JSR that got Lambdas and streams into Java 8. Yay! One of the, I guess, 90-something contributing authors to 97 things every Java programmer should know. So I have an article in there about learning how to create code katas. And that's a bit about us. And I guess we didn't do too much of an intro for our talk, but today we're going to be talking about Dataframes, collections, and streams in Java. So
yeah, we'll get to introduce it now a little bit. So the problem is that, you know, there are certain languages that are a little bit have a more reputation of being more data oriented. There are some other languages that are more having a reputation of being a bit more object oriented and stuff like that. And what we wanted to show here, and what we wanted to do in this presentation, is to show that, hey, you can actually use Java for object oriented stuff, and you can also do it work with streams and things like that, but also that you can also do it in a more of a way of data frames. You might know data frames from other languages like Python, from libraries like pandas and things like that, right? So let's see how that works also in Java, and that's the kind of the idea and motivation about this talk. We actually have another talk where we talk more about performance and memory efficiency of pretty much the same data structures and the same things. but that's a bit different. So maybe we'll mention some of the things whenever it fits the story. But if you've seen that talk, or if you want to see that talk, you can probably look it up on the big interwebs. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to process data, and then we needed to find data. And obviously, well, surprise, surprise, we used data from conferences. So basically what we did, we just created a list of the conferences that either I or Donald or both of us attended, well, subset of those for 2023. And then we were like, hey, we can actually use this and do some fun things. It all started with me going crazy and actually having lists of all the conferences I have had done through the years, and I wanted to generate statistics, and I was really determined that I wanted to do it with Java and not any other languages. So that's kind of the whole pre story for the whole thing. And we wanted to see how we can do it in Java in an efficient way. What options do we have? Well, we have Java Streams that we mentioned already. It's people talked about Java Streams up and down when it came out and everything. So we're not going to talk too much about what it is and how it is and stuff like that. But it's basically part of Java standard library. It's a kind of the battery included version. Then we're going to look into Eclipse Collections. Donald mentioned those that library as well already. So it's an open source library maintained at Eclipse Foundation. And also we'll be talking about something called Dataframe-EC. EC stands for, again, surprise, surprise, Eclipse Collections. It's kind of built on top of that. That is an open source library created by a guy called Vlad. And yeah, let's go into the data set. So the data set we're loading looks like this, just a little subset of that. So we have a bunch of conferences that do happen in a specific country or online. They have a start date, end date, which is a kind of a data like type. You'd probably want to have it as a data object or whatever, not a string. We'll see that later. And it also contains like 2 or 3 or maybe 1 element of a list of a session type. So it can be talks, workshops, lightning talks, things like that. Let's talk about what to choose and when.
Okay, so hopefully everybody like myself and Rustam love Legos. So best choice is that you can go find a Lego kit to build your stuff. But you know, jokingly and jumping in, what we wanted to do is actually have a bit of an analogy for folks to understand, you know, how one way to look at these libraries. So if we took each of these libraries and associated it with a different brick system from Lego. So look at Java Streams. We thought that kind of, you know, was very closely related to the standard Lego brick system. And you can see here we've got the Speed Champions, you know, Lego kit, which I think I've probably got, you know, the Legos built around somewhere. I think I gave you one as well, Rustam, right?
Yes, mine is still in a box on a shelf, waiting for me to find some
time to build it.
Some time for that.
Yeah. So as you know, with the standard brick system, you know, many people across the world, you know, have played with Legos. You know, you get this basic set of building blocks. Obviously, you gotta, you know, assemble them, follow some directions. You get, you know, some low level of control. And what's neat about Legos is they, you know, they give a recommended age range in on the box. So for the standard, you know, brick system for the Speed Champions kit, it was like recommended to be age 9+. We thought that was good. Like most Java developers, as they, you know, are learning the language and whatnot, will step into Streams and, you know, become familiar with it. We then thought, like, you know, for Eclipse Collections, there's a brick system for Lego. Less people are familiar with this one. And you know, it's I would say a more specialized brick system. It's called Lego Technic. Gives you more specialized blocks. It's really optimized for different things. You can build some really you know, cool stuff. As you can see here, this is a Lego kit I haven't built yet. I'm not sure where I put it. It's been sitting in my office forever, but yeah, Bugatti, you know, Chiron, which one of these days I'll build. But you can see it's got like an immense number of pieces. What is it, 3,600 pieces almost? And the age range for this is like 16+, right? So Lego Technic's still compatible with the existing blocks, and this is somewhat similar. Eclipse Collections is compatible with Java Streams. It actually works with it, works with the basic Java collections as well. But you know, gives you this, you know, better, you know, more specialization. Now, the next kit we talk about, and if you look right below the Bugatti Chiron here, you can actually see there's a Lego Mindstorms robot that I have. And Lego Mindstorms, for those that don't know, is actually built on top of the Lego Technic kit. So we thought this was a good way of saying, like, hey, Dataframe-EC is actually built on top of Eclipse Collections, right? So, but what it's doing is giving you, a higher level of approach. Instead of giving you the low level building blocks that you would get with just the brick system, you've got now a programmable brick, which you can barely see here. It's actually got a screen. You can program this thing. It's still compatible with the basic, building blocks, and you can actually program this brick, which we, will refer to as a data frame, to accomplish different things. And it's really targeted, towards, it's a higher age range than the standard brick system, but it's like 10 plus, so somewhere in between, let's say Java Streams and Eclipse Collections. Now, for the solutions that we built, and what we can do is we may jump into this, and you can actually see in the slides there are links to code, and I may actually jump around the code a bit to explain different things. But what we wanted to do is basically model the problem, for conferences. So we're loading the CSV conference data. For both the Java Streams and Eclipse Collection solutions, we created a conference record. So you see the definition of a record here. Record conference that has an event name, a country, a city, start and end dates, and then a set of session types. So with the conference record, then for both Java Streams and Eclipse Collections, we create a conference explorer. For Java Streams, we have the explorer holds on to a set of conferences, which are conference records, and then a set of countries, right? So country in the Java solutions is actually an enum, and a country will have the name, but it will also have the country flag, which will be important later for some of the stuff that we have to do, to join these things. So yeah, we have sets. For Eclipse Collections, we use immutable sets, and for data frames now for our Conference Explorer, each of the things, so conferences and country codes, are both represented with this type called data frame. Now with the Conference Explorer, we have a bunch of unit tests that we've written and implemented different algorithms for kind of querying against the data. So we read in the data from two CSV files, one for the conferences, one for the countries. Then we filter the data for a specified year. So we do for 2023. And then the different things that we do against the data, we sort the data, we group it, we count it, we sum it, and we get a unique set of values from it. And once we get do these different algorithms, we then actually want to output the data to JSON. So we figured this is kind of somewhat standard of what you typically want to do, like reads in some inputs, do some processing, output some stuff. And that's pretty much what we've done here. For the tests that we have, and you can see we've got links to each of the tests here, and I can actually show you, like if you step into the tests, you'll see the tests for each of the methods that we've written, and sometimes, yeah, testing that we've got the right country flags and stuff that we expect. And so tests for each of the different, Conference Explorer solutions, and you can see each of the test methods we have. We'll have tests for loading the data, for sorting, for grouping, counting, summing, and then for the output. So yeah, and I'll hand it back to.
And then let's talk about loading. By the way, if you wonder, we're going to share the link to the boss presentation and the code at the end, so you will actually get to see the presentation and the code for yourself, and that's why you can actually use the links to navigate inside the.
Yeah, and I guess one thing I could explain too, like you're actually seeing the presentation. I'm in IntelliJ right now. This whole presentation is in ASCII doc. So, when you check out the repo, and you can actually browse it online, the slides, it'll work in GitHub if you click through the links. It's all just ASCII doc files.
It's like 90-something%.
Yeah, images don't work so well.
99%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, you get. I mean, if the lazy version of that is just browsing it in GitHub, actually works for 90-something%. But yeah, okay. Let's go back to the code. So, first, the first thing we need to do is to load the conference data into CSV. It's a typical thing you would end up doing when you're processing data, right? All the kind of data engineers, all this kind of people would want to do that first thing. Well, with both Java Streams and Eclipse Collections, since we're doing the bit more of the object-oriented way, we need to actually, I mean, and since it's Java, we need to have something that will do it for us. So here we're using Jackson to read that data and to convert that into a set of files. The code is pretty much well, actually, it is exactly the same as far as I can remember. It's yeah, you're pretty much doing exactly the same thing with both Eclipse collections and Java streams, because you're using Jackson, you're mapping into an object, and ta-da. And then you generate a map out of it. With Dataframe is a bit different, because Dataframe-EC is a bit more specialized kind of way of handling data-centric or data-centric approach to programming. So here it actually comes with a little bit of convenience methods, like, for example, here we have actually do a loader that gets a URL and just loads the whole thing into a what we call data frame. Probably it's a good time to mention what data frame, the way I like to think about data frame, and the way I like to think about it is think of it as a spreadsheet with columns and tables and all this stuff. But it also gives you an ability to create dynamic columns with calculations and stuff. We'll see more of that in a bit, but I'm mentioning it now. Okay, let's go to the next thing. So here, first thing we want to do is like typical thing that you want to do with with your code, with a tip. If you have it in a database table or something like that, you want to sort things. You want to to create sort bys. So we wanted to sort, just to show a little bit of how to do this kind of things. We wanted to sort by days, number of days to the event. And to do that, again, for the object-oriented versions of that, Java streams, both Java streams and Eclipse collections, it's with the very minimal differences. It's pretty much using the convenience method that we created on the conference record. So we had to create a conference record, and we added a method there called days to event that does this kind of convenience method that does the calculations, does the number of days between two date objects, and returns you a number. For Dataframe-EC, things were a little bit different. So that was like already, remember I mentioned, I told you about this spreadsheet where you can create calculated values in columns, like you do formulas and stuff. Well, you do pretty much the same thing here. You create a function that is added as a column, and then you can actually, you basically have a very simple DSL to call that function. So first you create a function, intrinsic function descriptor, blah, blah. You give it a name, days until, and then you tell the value, return values, and what to do and how to do things and everything. And then at the end, you basically take a data frame object and you add another column called days to event. And then this is the DSL part where you do days until, and then you basically in a string, you say which functions to be called and which input parameter should be there. So the start date is another column that we're referring to. All right, next.
Okay, so
yeah, that's yours. Go ahead.
So the next thing we want to do is actually take the data and we want to group it by country. So in the case of Java Streams, what we're going to do is take the conferences set, call stream on it, use a grouping by collector, grouping by conference country. So that gives us the country enum that we have for each conference. And we're going to group this into, we use a downstream collector to collect to an unmodifiable set. And this gives us back a map of country to set of conference. In the Eclipse collections case, the conferences object, which if you recall is an immutable set, Eclipse collections has covariant overrides for various methods and has a method called group by, which for an immutable set, a group by will return an immutable set multimap. So we can just say group by here. Also, we're grouping by conference country still. In the case of Dataframe-EC, a little bit more evolved, but it's kind of neat actually what it does. And this was actually a neat experience in that we had some back and forth with the creator of Dataframe-EC, Vlad Zakharov, in terms of the functionality and how this works. And I'll probably jump into some code quick for this. But for Dataframe-EC, what we do is we create an index for this problem. We create an index called country, and we say basically we want to index on country, and then we return conferences, which this is the data frame. We call the index method. It gives us back the index for country that we've now created, and gives us back this type called df index. And from df index, what I can do is jump into the code here so you can see this. What we can do is, for, let's say, a particular, and I'm looking by country, right? We get back a df index when calling group by country. And then what we can do is on a df index, we can say iterate at Greece. And this will basically give us all of the rows for Greece that we can then iterate over using a for each. So instead of giving us a map, or let's say an immutable set multi-map like Eclipse Collections did, we get this df index type that we can then use that for looking at the bits of data across the data frame. So let's see. Now group by city is going to be pretty much similar. The only difference here is that what we're grouping by is city. And pretty much the same thing with Dataframe-EC. We're going to return a df index after we've decided to group by city. Okay, the next thing we want to do is actually count conferences by country. So in this case, instead of grouping, to see the conferences for each country, we want to see the number of conferences for each country. So in the case of Java Streams, we'll use a grouping by collector with a collect method, and use the downstream collector collectors.counting. And this gives us back a map of country to long. For Eclipse Collections, there's a method called count by on immutable set, and this will actually give us back a bag of country. A bag is like a map of some key to an int. And you can query against a bag for like the occurrences of something. So a little less, I guess, text than the stream solution, but kind of, doing something equivalent, right? In the case of Dataframe, there's a method on Dataframe called aggregate by. And what we do in the case of Dataframe, we're actually, you think about it this way, from the conferences, which were both sets, we're coming back either with a map or a bag. With Dataframe, we apply an aggregate function, which actually returns us another data frame. And what we're saying is we want to aggregate this particular data frame by country, this is where the by portion is. But with the columns that we want to get back are country and country count, right? So we define this aggregation function so that we can actually get both of these columns back. And I think you can actually see, if I jump into the code, what this will look like for the count by. So when I write the test for this, what you can do is actually create the expected data using this ability to just, once again, build up the data. And you can see we've got a data frame here where we've got a string column for country and a long column for country count, and this is the actual data. And then we can actually do the count by country and assert we use this utility data frame compare to actually compare both the expected and the actual results that we get back. So
that's actually also a pretty cool method that is available on Dataframes. So you can actually compare two data frames just easily.
Okay, so then we'll jump into count by month, and this is pretty much similar to the count by a country, right? So it's just we're using a different attribute. In this case, we're using the month, where we get back. We actually have a month. I guess that is month. I'm trying to refresh my memory. That is
no, actually, that's the thing. So you don't have a month because it's inside the data object. Sorry, date object, right? And then you actually have to. That's why you have to do a get month. So
well, that's what I was going to do. Is I was going to jump in to just refresh my memory on what.
Yeah, just have a look at the code. It's actually, I think
that's all I'm
quite
going to
fun.
do. So give me a second.
Get what is it? Get month. You should have a get month.
I didn't see it there. Looking in the. Hold on. Give me a second. It is conference get month. Okay. Oh, you know what? I was looking at Conference Explorer. That's why. So I want to go to Conference Explorer to conference. So conference has get month.
There you go.
Okay, so month, okay, takes the start date and calls get month on it. But this is then the month. This is from Java dates, right? So that's the Java date type. So
But again,
now,
like it's a built-in a bit of for smartness into the record. That's the way we handle it, right?
yeah, and I think where it's a bit different in that for data frame, we will have had to have calculated month, right? As a calculated value, right?
Yes.
So I can jump into that as well. But it's similar, like the code for implementing this, there's a bit more involved with actually calculating month for data frame. For the object solution, we have to define this method on conference, whereas we got to define a column for data frame. So
yeah, the idea was just to show you that it's possible to calculate things on the fly.
Yep. And that's just it. That's those are dynamic for month.
Yes.
Whereas
And
kind of things
now,
like country is already statically loaded, right? So
yeah. And now we've done all kind of sorting and stuff, right? And now we can actually do a little bit of counting. So that's the next thing that you you learn when you go to start going to school and stuff like that. You start counting things, and that's what you want to do here as well. Okay, we want to count to create a sum of conference days by country. And this is a bit more tricky, right? Now, first you need to create a list of unique countries. Then you need to create to have an overview of all the days each conference takes, and then you have to create a sum of those. So the way to do it with Java Streams, and again, Java Streams and Eclipse Collections is kind of similar, but well, they're a little bit different, but still. With the streams, you do collections, you do group by country, and then you do another sum where we actually calculate the duration, right? With Eclipse Collections, it was, well, kind of similar, but we have object long map that is being returned. And then you do, again, some summarizing by a long, which is the number of days. We represent as a long, and then you do countries as well. For Dataframe-EC is a bit, it looks much easier, right? But the reason it looks easier, it's actually, and well, it looks a bit easier and a little bit confusing. Let's start the easiest part. The easier part is that we don't need to do any calculations because we already have a dynamic column that is being calculated for us called duration. So now we don't really need to do that stuff, right? All we need to do is to call conferences sum by. I think a little bit confusing part is the order of those, right? Because you actually do sum by, and then you say duration, and then you actually have to tell sum by what.
yeah, so the parameters are just reversed between the two. Like Java Streams and Eclipse Collections have the same order, whereas the by is the second parameter here.
Yes.
Here, the by is the first parameter.
It's kind of logical when you understand why it is like that, but it is a very
well, it's saying sum this by that, right?
And it's like every time, like if I haven't seen this code for a little bit of time, it's just like I was like, why was oh yeah, that's why. Yes, okay. So that's pretty much it where we when it comes to this one. Let's go to the unique values, which is a bit more fun.
Ooh, this is the fun one.
We added. So I had this thing that I was like, for every country I've been doing a talk, I would actually generate a little emoji flag and put it on my website. So then I was kind of collecting all the flags for all the countries I've been speaking. And then this was a kind of the inspiration for creating a column where we would actually generate a little flag emojis. So with Java Streams and Eclipse Collections, again, we're using the country object where it's already stored, and when we can actually generate all these kind of things. In Dataframe is a bit different. So here we're doing actually kind of fun things. So now we're doing a bit more of the way you would typically do in databases and tables and that kind of stuff. So we actually have a distinct lookup data frame called, what's it called again? It's called distinct countries with all the country codes. So as you can see there on line 4, it says district countries lookup, and then it does data frame join to this country codes. And then it basically takes a 2-letter country codes and adds that into the a data set of all the conferences. We're going to use those 2-letter codes to actually generate. So there is we're not going to talk about this, just not to, because we don't have much time, but it is, there is something called, so there is a way of generating emojis that are consisting of several Unicode values. And the way you do that, you just line up several Unicode values after each other, and boom, it becomes like, I don't know.
Well, this was one of the coolest learning things for me, like preparing
This
this
was
talk.
really
Like I
fun.
got to learn, like, how do you build flags out of
Yes.
2 Unicode values, right? And it
So
was
you take basically 2-letter codes for, like, for example, Norway would be NO, USA would be US, and all this kind of stuff. And then you just take a Unicode, special Unicode character for a letter U, and then you take another one for S. You put them together, and boom, it becomes a US flag. And it's the same for all the countries, and it's kind of fun. But you can also generate all these complex emojis where you can see like mother, father, and a kid, or like 2 characters or together or something like that. Is all of those are basically complex like this, but we're not going in there.
And if you dive into the
because
code, you can see how the code actually works for all this, right?
we ended up, I went down the rabbit hole, and I kind of at some point dragged Donald with me into that rabbit hole. So I'm trying not to drag you all into that, but it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. But the point here is that you can do joins on tables, and then when you've done joins on tables, you can actually add columns, and then you again have your own DSL where you say toFlag emoji function, and then you actually do an alpha to code, basically a name of a column that we have created in line 6. And then that function will actually generate an emoji and return that into the.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden
I
you added.
I won't jump into all the code, but I'll at least jump in so you can see
Yeah, do it.
the emojis
There
here.
you are.
So we can actually, make sure that we get back the, expected flags and whatnot. So, and the nice thing, I don't know, I love coding with emojis in IntelliJ.
It's really fun.
Makes me
I
happy.
mean, now that we can actually do that, it's really fun. I remember when I started coding like 20 something way too many years ago. It was if you would just had a wrong encoding into your file, everything would just break and go up in flames. So this is fun. You can actually do that now. It's a brave new world. All right. Speaking of rabbit holes, let's talk about JSON. This is another thing that, okay, now we've done and processed things and put things together, counted and summarized, and created sums and aggregates and all this stuff. Now we need to persist all that beautifulness into something that can be stored somewhere. And well, how we do that? Well, because all the cool kids use JSON, so we're gonna do JSON. Obviously, you can do other things as well, but in this case, again, for both Java Streams and Eclipse Collections, it's a little bit different code, but the idea is pretty much the same. You have an object mapper that is kind of standard, where you just push into that object mapper, and you provide some data, and it will just store it for you. For Eclipse Collection, it's a little bit. You had to
Yeah, so I
add a
think
little bit
for
of
both
switch, right?
solutions, for Streams and Eclipse Collections, we're just using Jackson, which is the object mapper code,
That
right?
is correct.
And what's interesting is for Java Streams, the only thing you need to add is the Java time module to Jackson. So this is how you handle the local dates translating to JSON. For Eclipse Collections, you need both the Java time module, and there is a separate Jackson project for third-party collections, which has the Eclipse Collections module as well, and that will handle the Eclipse Collections types. The special code that we had to write for Eclipse Collections that I'm actually using when we do write value a string here, you see this is actually a pattern matching for switch, right? So I actually switch on the result, and if the result that is bag, it turns out like for bag, the way that would get outputted using Eclipse Collections, bag as a collection. So it would actually, if I had, let's say, country of USA in a bag to a count of 3, the way it would output would be like USA, 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 because bag is a collection, it's not a map. But if I want the output to look like a map, I actually have to then convert that to a map to be outputted so it shows up USA 3, right? So that's why I do this like case within the switch there. But it's neat that, once again, this is a switch expression contained within this call to the right value as string method, right? So a little bit more complex than what you had to do in streams, and you got the extra module, but not too bad. But then there was the cool stuff that Rustam did with Dataframe-EC.
So this is another rabbit hole I ended up. I mean, I was like, this thing was full of rabbit holes, and we took them all, and we like at least once
filled them with concrete.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's always fun to go down the rabbit hole, isn't it? But yeah, so here we actually had to, so this library did not have a specific serializer. So I actually had to go down the rabbit hole of Jackson serializers and understand how to write your own serializer, and then make sure that the serializer actually does what it's supposed to do, and then, do all the fun things. So I ended up with a Dataframe custom serializer, which would, do all this serialization for me and then register that. So in case you haven't written your own, you can actually have a look at this one, because this is quite simple, easy to understand once you actually know how things are going.
You want me to jump into it?
Yeah, I don't know, we have time? Yeah, we have time.
Yeah, we got it. Dataframe custom serializer.
Yeah, there it is. So you see, no rocket science, and it's probably could have been done a bit more better for performance. So right now we're having like nested loops and stuff, which is performance-wise probably not a very good idea. But look, it's kind of easy to read, right? You just go through all the rows, and then for each row you go through all the columns, and then you write it as a string, and ta-da, you have an actually a JSON object at the end. So it's not a very big thing, but it still took me a little bit of time to actually understand how to do that, what methods to override and all this, and then how do you actually register it. So
so it was funny, I guess, like looking at what we had to go through. Dataframe was actually easier on the input side because we didn't need like a third-party library to read the JSON. But on the output side, it was a bit more complicated because we did need a third-party library, and we had to write. Yeah, Rustam had to write our own serializer for it. So,
but I mean, it's also a little bit, I think, about the library being a bit more kind of young. So it like I don't remember if I actually pushed that serializer or we actually decided to create. I don't remember what I did with this, but anyway, that doesn't matter. I think I either pushed the code actually into Dataframe, or we decided that we'll actually create another plugin that we will publish. I don't remember exactly what we agreed on with Vlad.
Yeah, maybe when 2023 comes to an end, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, we can do it like, the resolutions for 2024, go down more rabbit holes.
Yeah. Okay, so looking, I guess, like the solutions that we got to iterate through on this particular problem, right? So you take Java streams. We looked at both the pros and cons. Some of the obvious pros for Java streams is built into the Java language, and they continue to evolve it. If you look at the latest stuff that's coming out, they're adding this new thing called gatherers to streams, right? So you'll get like some extra special ways of, whatever kind of aggregations you need to do somewhere, where it's not as complex as maybe what you had to do with collectors. So it'll, once again, more features and functionality being added. There is extensive training and books and whatever available out there, so no shortage of information on streams. So you're able to leverage new features in the language like Java records, which we were using here. Tons of resources out there familiar with it, right? Streams are open source. It's part of the OpenJDK, right? The only challenge is if you wanted to contribute something back, it could take you a while because you do need to earn credibility to be able to contribute. You do have to sign the Oracle contributor agreement, so on and so forth. But it's open source, so some of the cons with streams, it's it can be verbose. You do have to do the button methods where it's .stream, .collect. You don't have eager methods on the collections themselves. You do have to be careful with result types, where if you come back with a map for both grouping by and counting, you have to be aware that they are unsafe for, or null unsafe in the result types. And that what that means is if you look up a value that doesn't exist, it's a map, it's going to give you back null, right? So you've got to be prepared to handle that, using, the appropriate either checks for nullness or to use methods that can handle it. And still requires the Jackson CSV and JSON dependency. So Eclipse Collections, you get a rich and concise API. It does have null safe result types. So like group by returns multi-map. If you look up a key that doesn't exist, you get back an empty collection. With count by, if you look up a key that doesn't exist using occurrences of, it returns 0, right? So you don't have to worry about dealing with nulls. It does have primitive collection support where you need that. And that was like the one example we had for SumBy, where it's got an object long map. So you don't have to worry about the memory cost of boxing long, objects if you've got like a lot of data in there. There are extensive and it seems like growing number of katas available. I don't know, I feel like I must have created 10 katas by now for Eclipse Collections over the years. So lots out there you can learn and experience as long as you like katas. It is open source, you can contribute to it. You do have to sign the Eclipse contributor agreement, right? But after you do that, we welcome contributions, at the Eclipse Foundation. So cons, it's a third-party dependency, right? Streams built in. This requires you taking an extra jar. There's less resources in the world that you could call upon. Hopefully, that increases over time. And that's me, raising awareness, whatever. And similar to like streams, also requires the CSV and JSON dependency. And then Dataframe-EC.
Yeah, well, Dataframe-EC is a little bit different. So it has a rich and concise API. It has a built-in support for CSV and things like that. As we've seen, you still had to add some more stuff for dumping things to JSON, but it wasn't really difficult. It was 2 for loops. And since it's a table structure, it's actually quite easy to, you don't really need, it won't get that much complicated as really. It has a lot of flexibility. So, if you think back to the Lego things, it has all this kind of specialized bits and pieces that maybe not going to fit any kind of model, but for, your specific model for the thing you're building, it actually has a really, really nice flexibility for those pieces because you don't really have to build them from scratch. Built-in DSL was a really handy feature for referring back to functions and defining input values and stuff. Eclipse Collections is it is a dependency, but still, it's also
it's got it there so you can use it. It's the point.
Yeah, it is there. You still have to pull in Eclipse Collections as a dependency, but it also means that you get all the flexibility that we've seen so far with both technically streams and Eclipse Collections that you can actually use inside Dataframes-EC as well. Open source, and the maintainer is a very, very nice guy. He is very helpful, and we've been bugging him quite a bit, and also try to return favors.
And I think Surisha Ranat, we should bug him to actually present at the Pittsburgh Java User Group on Dataframe-EC, I think.
Yeah,
I was thinking the same too.
That would be fun. Yes.
Yes, we'll do that.
And well, we at least we tried to give something back, and I did submit a few pull requests, and that got accepted, and there are a few more things that we were kind of planning to how to do it and everything. So
yeah, and like I showed, I guess like there was some extra methods we got added during this talk on the DF index code. So I worked with Vlad on how we could improve that to make it easier to write code against, especially for our unit testing. So.
Yeah, so that's all the positive things. And cons is, well, it's another third-party dependency. It's a little bit less availability of skilled resources for now, and it's it takes some time to mature a library. So it's not yet fully mature as the alternatives that we compared to, or things like that out there, because this is one of them, right? There are other things like TableSaw or other libraries that are available in Java as well. We did not look into those in as a part of this talk, but they're out there and they're probably a little bit
We did
more.
actually, I did a little bit of investigating with TableSaw on the memory talk that we did, just so we could see a comparison. And
Yeah, and
there's
also
some interesting things on that.
we also did look at the APIs that TableSaw provided, because we were like, oh, is that a reasonable thing to do? Oh yeah, they do that as well. So I've been looking a little bit into TableSaw, but I also been looking actually into the things like pandas and all this stuff that is comes in other languages and everything, where we would look into like, okay, is this a reasonable thing to expect? Oh yeah, okay, they're not doing that. Okay, probably it's just in my head. Or
Now, it's
okay, they
interesting. I
have
think
it there.
if I'm not mistaken with TableSaw, they're somewhat similar in what Dataframe-EC did, which is they actually built on top of another third-party collections framework called FastUtil.
Yeah.
Because they're using the primitive collections from FastUtil, like Vlad uses the primitive collections from Eclipse Collections. So, again, you don't get them built into standard Java, so you need to go either build them yourself, if you want to have, once again, the memory efficiency and performance, or you leverage a third-party library, which both of these frameworks have done. So,
exactly. So yeah, here we wanted to show you a little bit of this data-oriented programming bit, and to show you that it's actually possible, it's feasible, flexible, and actually fun. You can do a lot of things that you would really not maybe expect to get out of the box, but you actually can. Features would determine your preferred approach, so you will need to think about what you want to do, how you want to do it, and that will help you to pick which of those three that we have shown, three approaches that we've shown you, or maybe something else. Some useful features that we used preparing this talk. Well, obviously we mentioned already Java records. We also mentioned pattern matching for switch, which is so it's forced preview when we created those slides. Now it's actually in GA, so it's out there. It came with Java 21. Then we have the Java time library, Jackson for CSV, Jackson for JSON, Unit 5, JUnit 5 for all the unit tests that we've created. ASCII doc, that's basically what you're looking at. IntelliJ, that's still the same thing that you're looking at right now. And this rabbit hole of flag emojis it's called surrogate pairs. If you want to Google it, Google surrogate pairs, emojis, and then you will, you're welcome. You see you on Monday by the time you will get out of the rabbit hole. It's really fun though.
And I guess like the link that we can share, so all of the slides and code for everything is up on this GitHub repo.
And the slides are in, well, surprise,
it's
in
got
the
a presentation
folder. Yeah.
And pretty much like we were talking about before, if you just click any of the slides, GitHub will render it pretty well. So you can actually navigate through the slide deck. And actually, that one I really, really like. Oops. We didn't talk about that. Oops. Where did it go? This one.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is actually, it's funny because if you look at the raw data for this,
yeah,
it's actually the CSV data.
Yeah. So it actually renders it, prints it.
Yeah, which is nice. So yeah, from displaying the ASCII doc, it's actually rendering the CSV data. So I was like, oh, we should just use, ASCII doc for processing all of our data. And then you can see, the code is sitting out here, and you'll see like each of the solutions have their own their modules and stuff, and like all the source out there. So you can see what Conference Explorer looks like for Dataframe-EC, all the code for Eclipse Collections and native Java. And the data that we use is stored here. So this is the conference. That's funny. There you go. GitHub rendering it again. So there's the CSV data for conferences, and this is the country codes. And this is what Rustam was talking about. There's the 2-digit code that actually is going to get turned into the emoji for you. So yeah, that's it for the.
So yeah, have a look. Oh yeah, by the way, go back to the GitHub. If you go back, so show the other repository with the performance stuff as well. If you go, I think it's just called perf. Oh yeah, you can do that. Yeah, that's one way of doing that.
Look at this guy,
Hey,
so sharp.
yeah, it used to be.
So yeah, collection data frames perf, and
It's the same
actually
thing.
all the
So
slides.
this is actually the performance, the memory performance and memory.
Yeah, it's funny too because and Rustam and I, as we were preparing to do this talk again, we gave this talk at DevNexus and DevOps Greece, so that was like April and May, and
Mhm.
then we gave this talk, the performance one, at QCon New York in June, and then DevOps Belgium in October.
Mhm.
And yeah, the memory one is really, really interesting, and the stuff that we talk about,
We
which
talk a lot about the Martian.
we do talk about the Martian, but trying to think like there it is. So the thing we talk about is really like this tool that people should learn about, which is Java Object Layout, and this actually is a tool that can help you understand better how memory works in Java and what the cost of your objects are in RAM. So and it
And
was
it can
neat with
actually also estimate things for you that is not even in your code yet, but it will tell you that if you do that, it will actually be blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
Kind of
So,
cool.
and it's funny because we had the benefit when we gave the talk in DevOps Belgium, the creator of JAL, Alexei Shipolev, was in the audience for us for our talk. So got to give him a shout out because pretty much like everything in this talk was like, you can see I'm leveraging Java Object Layout. This is Java Object Layout code. I'm using the graph layout class to actually output the layout of objects and to show what the memory cost is. So two completely different talks centered around exactly the same domain. So it's interesting to go through that. So, but I'll stop sharing my screen, and we can do some questions if Rustam's not ready to completely pass out.
No, not yet. I'm good. I'm still fine. I'm still upright.
Right, that's good. That's good. No, this was a great session. I did not expect to see a comparison between Streams library and Dataframe. I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting to see, honestly.
Well,
So
hopefully
it
we
was
exceeded your
actually,
expectations then.
yeah, so it was kind of fun to draw parallels between things that you're sort of used to seeing with like tables and columns and like that world, and combining it with bringing that together with streams, which you're also comfortable and like you use it on a daily basis, or streams
Yeah.
as in streams or Eclipse collections, right?
Yeah,
So it was a good session.
it's interesting because and there is, let me share my screen for this because this is interesting. This just happened recently. So there are some things that you know collections, objects, streams will lend themselves to. And then there are some things that like data frames will lend themselves to. And there was a recent blog I wrote, and I'm just going to find it in a weird way. I'm going to find Vlad's blog. So I did a blog recently about set operations, and inspired by Sarisha, blogs that you wrote a year or two ago about primitive set operations. And after I wrote the blog, Vlad wrote a version of the blog using data frames. So we now have a comparison. We have a comparison between doing this with Eclipse collections. I think I covered JDK, so streams, Eclipse collections, and then Vlad added the data frame solution. And it's funny to think like, and of course we have emojis in here. So I was doing things like union intersection and symmetric, no, sorry, union intersection difference. I think Vlad added symmetric difference as well.
Mhm.
But, and you can see he's actually reading in creating data frames and actually showing how to do set operations using data frames. Now, and this is why if you look at his image for the blog, it's really like you have a hammer, just go find the nails. It's like not really made for
Everything
this,
looks
but
like
it shows
nails when
you
you
can
have a hammer.
solve problems in so many different ways, even though it's like doesn't lend itself. So like the version I wrote, using Java streams and Eclipse collections, I've got 3 sets and I want to, let's say, union, intersection, and difference them. And, I show how it would happen with Java collections, how it would happen with streams. Actually, so 3 solutions I did: collections, streams, and then Eclipse collections. So yeah, it's just interesting. And then there was a separate gentleman, Paul King, who's out of Australia. He works. I think he's on the Groovy Apache program chair, I think. So he did the same problem solving in Groovy. And it's really interesting because in Groovy, they actually have operators for them. So you can actually do, union intersection using the operators. So it's kind of neat. But anyways, I'm sorry, I digress. Where's the button for me to stop sharing? It went somewhere.
Thank you both for a great session. And I want to see if anyone else has any questions.
Oh, there it is.
On the call. Otherwise, we can let
questions, comments, feelings, anything goes.
I actually have some observations.
Sure, perfect.
The comparisons between the streams and the Eclipse collections and the data frames, I was actually surprised to see that the data frame examples were actually not as concise as the streams and the Eclipse collections. And my experience is that that is something that the Dataframes folks, mainly Pandas folks, and Python users, they brag about the conciseness. Well, I should say concise with air quotes, because I have a specific definition of concise that sort of differs between people who think that just like less code and terseness is being concise. But I was actually surprised to see, like, I've never seen the EC data frame project, and I have seen table saw and some other implementations, but I was surprised that there was just more code around the data frames example.
Yeah, I think it's actually a great, I would say it's a great observation. And what I would say is that it really comes down to, for both Pandas as well as TableSaw and other, let's say, more mature data frame projects, I think over time, what you do is as you solve more and more problems, you tend to build in more convenience. Like if you've seen the same problem over and again, let's make this easier, right? And I think, with Dataframe-EC, what you've got is a library that was built to solve some very specific problems that, say, Vlad had, right? And he's kind of grown it in that, sense. And I think Rustam and I, both as we talk to Vlad, we suggest, why don't you add this? Such and such adds it. And he'll be like, what's your use case? And we'll be going, well, we're about to give a talk and it'd be really cool if you had it in there so we could, have a really concise version for our talk. But our talk is not really a production use case, right?
Well, do the talks actually have, do the talks actually have demonstrations of live coding? Because that is a huge contrast I see between with data engineering, data operations, seeing the difference between a Python, Pandas, NumPy programmer doing live coding versus somebody using a statically typed language. The Python live coding is trying to think how to say it in a nice way.
It's gonna be faster and impressive, right? But the thing is, like, that's great if what you do is you work in a bank and you do all of your coding with live coding in production, you probably won't be in existence too long, right? But if you've got enterprise
that's what I was gonna say. That's what I was gonna say. Watching a Pandas guru trying to live code without the static typing, it's actually painful for me and for a lot of people that are
because they just know it and you don't know what they're doing. They've got,
well, they think they know it. They think they know it, and they type, and they're usually working in a notebook environment or something, and they type out this long, flowing expression. You're thinking, wow, that's they know a lot, and they hit the run, it doesn't work. And they're like, and they don't know if the cell that they're working in is problematic, or it's 2 cells up, or it's 5 cells, because it's all hidden. It's all deep underneath. But then in the dynamic type system. And it just, in aggregate, these live coding things take a lot longer.
But sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the trade-off that I see, the trade-off that I even experience is that even if my code is not as concise, even if I have to work with an API that's more verbose, in aggregate, I actually get the work done faster and it's less error prone at the end of the day, because I have everything in front of me. I have the type system, I have the compilation, I have all these things as my safety net and as my coding assistant. It's not even an AI coding assistant. It's actually a deterministic assistant sitting there and baked into the tools, versus a lot of this, dynamic typing and the very what they think they're calling concise, the expression language and the DSLs that they whip through, but then it doesn't really work. And if they're lucky, it doesn't work and they get error messages. When they're not lucky, they push it to production and it doesn't pop up for a while. Exactly.
But the two things, right? First is the concise is not always equals to readable. That's one thing. And the second thing is that you can talk as much as you can about like dynamic typing and all this, but it's also from the same people that are using things like Pydantic, which is basically a type system on top of Python. So I don't really buy this dynamic. I mean, I usually call Python my second mother tongue after Java. But when it comes to programming languages, so I've written my share of like libraries and stuff in Python, and I love it and all that. But it's you talk all about this this stuff that, well, we have dynamic typing and everything. What do you do next? You add Pydantic. What do you do after that? You add return values and data types to all your methods and to your signatures and stuff. So you can brag as much as you want, but at the end you will actually go back to the type system, which is kind of funny. So I guess we can.
I'm trying not to weigh in as a former Smalltalk developer who grew up in dynamic type systems.
Oh no, we don't want to go in there.
No, it's funny because I didn't know about Pydantic, but I've seen recently Smalltalk developers talking about this new type system they've layered on top of Smalltalk, and I'm like, no, why are you doing that? You're just admitting that you should go with a static type system. Don't show me a dynamic type system built on top of a dynamic type system to show you types.
No.
Weird.
Yeah. Thank you, Philip. Though that was a good discussion there.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for that.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess this is the time that we say happy holidays, happy New Year. Thank you everyone for joining us, and Renat will do his
do his little dance.
Do his little YouTube recording. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We'll have the recording up, and yeah, it was an awesome session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, Rustam and Donald. Don.
Donald.
Yeah, no, but thank you, Rodrigo, Han, Robin, and Philip for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Okay, thanks everybody.